Good afternoon and welcome to the council. I'm your host, Charlie Pacello, and it's been a long time, folks. We had some interesting weather out here in Colorado that knocked out our station for a little bit, for a few days, and so the council was off, and we haven't been here in the studio for almost a month. So I'm very happy to be back with all of you. We are broadcasting live here from KUHSdenver.com. That's KUHSdenver.com. We have the best shows and the best people, Henry, Sylvia, the Love Doctor, and everybody. They're fantastic, and you got to tune in to KUHS Denver. We broadcast all over Colorado, all over the nation, and all over the world. We are touching lives on every continent. It's really an amazing place, amazing people. So please tune in to KUHSdenver.com. Got a couple of announcements before we start today's show and introduce my guest. I will be presenting at the 5D Events Conference. It's going to be in Las Vegas from April 18th through the 21st. That is going to be Easter weekend in Las Vegas, and I'll be one of the presenters there. I'll be on a couple panels that I'll be presenting. It's all about higher consciousness and spirituality and business, and working to bring a better world onto our planet, and working with some of the top professionals and people out there that are working to bring this a new understanding and level of love that embraces all of humanity. So please, if you are going to be in Vegas, come out and say hello. Buy tickets at www.5devents.com. That's 5devents.com. And we'll be talking more about that in a couple weeks before we go to actually do a show in Vegas. We'll do a show in Vegas when we get out there. So, all right. Next few weeks, I'll also be announcing the publication of my first book. It's going to be coming out. It's going to be called Meditations with Masters of the Axial Age, and it's one of my favorite periods in human history. It's all focusing on this period of time where all these different areas in the world were being, there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of suffering, but these different periods, these different places were being influenced by this something that was in the air. This idea of treating others the way you want to be treated. The golden rule was coming up without having any contact. None of these areas were in communication, but they were discovering that. And so it's really about walking with the masters. And there's 6 masters that I think you'll enjoy walking with, and some meditations and workbook, because you're going to want to be able to understand this for yourselves. You've got to put it in language that you understand. And so anyway, I will be announcing when that publication is out, when the book is out, and I hope that for many of you it will be something that will be very beneficial and fruitful for your own personal development. Now, today's show, we're going to be talking about redemption. There's kind of been a focus in the last couple shows is this idea of forgiveness, an idea of redemption, and about how can we achieve that? How do we overcome the things that have happened to us in our lives? It's not a simple thing of just shutting down and thinking, I can just walk away from it. It doesn't work that easily. Maya Angelou said that there's no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you. What does she mean by that? It's these secrets that we harbor inside of the traumas and the tragedies and the pains and the horrors and the sadness and the loss and the grief, all that we've experienced that we keep buried, that we keep holding on to, and it keeps us from living a full life. And if we've experienced traumas and tragedies and heartbreak in our lives, sometimes we've made mistakes. Or sometimes we've been a part of people who've hurt us very deeply. And when we've done something that we've regretted or feel remorse about, so often we ask, what was I thinking? Where was I? Or if you've experienced hurt, you're often left to wonder, why did this happen to me? Why did somebody do this to me? Why could somebody do this to my children? Or how could this possibly happen? And If you're a victim of a particular situation, violence in any form, whether it's emotional abuse, psychological abuse, physical abuse, war, desertion, abandonment, betrayal, torture, or anything that violates yours or another person's soul, it can be very difficult to recover the life you once had or the joy you once felt. You really want to be able to share the story that happened to you. You want to be able to share it to be heard, especially if you're the victim of it. You want your pain acknowledged by the community and by the offender. Because behind that outrage and the screaming and the accusation and the blame and the hurtful words is this core need to be acknowledged for their pain. And, incidentally, to also restore the relationship with the one who hurt them. We have this primal need for atonement. It was written in all the old sacred books about this need to atone, okay, at one meant. However, if the guilty offender, whether it's a man or a woman, has no concrete way to atone, if it's just punitive, then it kind of hinders the process from actually happening. Because if there's no concrete way for them to atone, that is to own the offense without being identified with it and given the opportunity to make amends, this process of atonement is short-circuited. We've got to remember that it takes two to restore a relationship. It takes two of them. And there's a process which we know works, and that's restorative, not punitive. And this involves forgiveness, remorse, and the conscious actions to atone for whatever may have happened. It's not enough just to say, I'm sorry. It's not. For how can you know? How can you really know you really mean it if you don't follow through with a change of behavior or deeds to make right what went terribly wrong? You can't fake a real change of heart. You can't fake it. With a genuine emotional transformation, it's somehow only complete when it's expressed in action. Now, Diane Hennessy Powell, she's a neuroscientist and psychologist and founder of the psychiatric program at Survivors of Torture International in San Diego, who has worked with victims of genocide, torture, and sexual abuse. She says, atonement requires asking forgiveness and doing something meaningful to express one's contrition. End quote. And yet it's crazy. There's this huge discrepancy between our innate ability and potential to do good and our hurtful behavior. It's like there's two people inside of us, which there is. Our brains have this amazing capacity to think analytically, spiritually, metaphorically, symbolically, and at the same time, allows for lies, self-deception, and rationalizations for why we do what we do. We lie to ourselves, and we do it a lot. And we eventually come to believe in those lies because we don't want to have to face the truth and the consequences of our actions. And as a consequence of this inability to own our wrongs and atone, we perpetuate the cycle of violence. Because this excites in the victim or the people that have been hurt with the need to get revenge. An eye for an eye. And that revenge and that way of thinking has brought us to the world that we live today. And it doesn't, so this way of thinking is, I need to seek revenge. Revenge may be justified, but it is never justice. It doesn't make things better, it makes things worse. Now the truth is, we are accountable for our actions, both good and bad. And atonement can only happen when both parties want to bring peace and harmony back to the relationship or situation which has caused so much harm. Now I want to give you an example of how this idea forgiveness and atonement can work. And I want to tell you a brief story about Azim Nordin Kamisa. And I'm probably mispronouncing that, so forgive me on that. Azim Nordin Kamisa, who forgave the 14-year-old murderer of his only son, Tariq. Think about that. His son was a pizza delivery boy. When he was out delivering, he was going to school, and this, I think his name was, I'll have to look here. But anyway, this boy ended up, Tony, his name was Tony. He ended up shooting this boy for no reason, because it was a gang-related thing. It was an initiation to a gang. And he lost his only son. And it was so easy for him to fall into that pain of wanting to seek revenge. And he came from the Sufi tradition, which is an offshoot of Islam. And in that faith, they really want you to go into the deeper meaning, that you have to bypass your mind, and you have to bypass your heart, because your mind will make all kinds of stories, and your heart is not as reliable. You've got to get down into the soul. You've got to get down into the soul of things. And so when he was burying his son, part of their tradition is you had to reach in and jump down in there and hold on to him, and one last sign of being letting go. And he was in that moment, he realized his son was not coming back. And he felt such guilt for not being there for him, for not being to protect him. And in their tradition, they have 40 days of mourning. And there's every 10th day they have a certain prayer, and then every 20th they have to. It's because they believe that the soul stays around the families for that period of time. But after 40 days, you've got to move forward. And you've got to, otherwise the soul stays and it is not allowed to move on into the light. And so he had to find some way to be able to deal with this deep pain that he was feeling. And so what he ended up doing was he forgave Tony, the young boy who killed him, because he saw that both of them were victims of this crime. That it was two victims in this crime. His son and the boy who ended up shooting him. And so he forgave him. And he wanted to be able to try to make something good out of this situation. And he reached out to the boy's grandfather, Tony's grandfather, and said, I can't get back my son. And your son is now, it was his grandson, your grandson is now in adult prison. He's a 14-year-old who's being tried as an adult. He's now in an adult prison. And he's, we've got to try to do something. We've got an opportunity here to do something good. And so that this kind of stuff doesn't happen anymore with our children. And so they formed the Tariq Kahimsa Foundation. And they set the stage for how to be able to work through forgiveness and how to be able to make sure that this cycle of violence doesn't continue and perpetuate. And what he learned was that there are steps out for anybody who wants to forgive. You have to take some steps. And if you're the victim of it, and this is from somebody who has walked the path of it. For the victim, step one is you need to acknowledge that you've been wrong, which leads to a painful grieving process. And it's not easy. And you've got to ground yourself in doing activities and creating spiritual currency and doing good deeds to restore your own self, to atone in your own self for anything you feel like you may have done wrong. Step two is to give up all the resulting resentment. Right? There's a lot of resentment, especially towards a person that may have hurt you and have harmed you. And how do you give that up? And that's really about saying, oh my God, this is the darkness within me. And it's going to turn me into something I don't want to be. And I've got to deal with that. And I've got to take as long as it's going to take to put that stuff on the cross or wherever you got to put it, and until it's done. And number three We must go beyond forgiveness and reach out to the offender in love and compassion in order to create conditions for atonement to occur. Then the opportunity for create the opportunity for healing actions. When they created this foundation, it was both Tariq's father, Azim, and then the grandfather of Tony, the murderer of his son. But his story doesn't end there. They reached out to Tony and gave him the opportunity for him to redeem himself. And so part of that process was for the offender, in order for that to happen, step one is that they must take full responsibility for their actions. And that's really hard to do. A lot of us don't take full responsibility for the wrongs we do in life. We just don't. We can see the wrongs in others. We can easily see when other people do us wrong. Boy, we've got that zeroed in, but it's really hard to swallow our pride and be able to say, no, I really messed up here. Number two, the second step is to ask for forgiveness of the people that you hurt. Whether you get it or not, you still need to ask for it. And that's part of the process of this forgiveness, remorse, and atonement. Step three is for offenders is to forgive themselves. I've certainly have made mistakes in my life, and I had to forgive myself for things that I regretted doing. And I wasn't living at my best, and so that's a big deal to try, and it's a hard process, and it takes a little time to get there. And a lot of it is about engaging in that spiritual currency or doing good deeds. Atonement, authentic actions. That's step four. Authentic actions done to make amends. Whatever I can do to make amends to right this as best I can. And ultimately, the more you do that, that leads to step five for the offender, which is redemption. You've been redeemed. So this is that equation. Forgiveness plus action, making amends. Forgiveness plus action, which means making amends, equals atonement. And what they gave Tony an opportunity to do was to be able to come out when he left prison, to work with a foundation, to help other kids not be put into the same position that he was in. He reformed himself completely in jail. There are pictures, I haven't seen them personally, when he was a young 14-year-old boy, caught up in the gangs. He went to school. He got his degrees. He came out, and now he's an inspiration to help other kids not to fall into that same path. And they've helped over 8 million, as far as this book was written, over 8 million children. That's incredible. So that's how forgiveness can lead to something good. That's why this equation works. All right, all of us have to have done things in our lives that maybe we didn't live up to the best, that we're not happy about, things that, we wish we could go back and change. But we don't get that option anymore. And so when we let ourselves down, when perhaps we could have done and made better choices, we're given an opportunity, this path to redemption that's available to us all. And it's in all spiritual traditions. It's all faiths, if we choose it. We don't always get to choose what happens to us, but we do get to decide what we do. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce to all of you my very, very special guest today. Her name is Stephanie G. Meadows. She's a first-time author and entrepreneur. Stephanie is a wife and mother of 3 beautiful children. And alongside her husband, they own KUHS Cleaning Services, LLC. She has been called to help change the lives of many people. She volunteers as a youth leader at Glory to Glory Christian Center, led by Pastor Joel Sewell. Through her inspiring testimony, she wants people to know through faith, hope, love, and pure determination that anyone can live the life they have always imagined. That's wonderful, Stephanie.
I appreciate that.
Welcome to the show.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's my pleasure. I heard about your story, and I thought, Henry was telling me about it. I thought you'd be absolutely perfect coming on to talk about it. These are these are real life issues. These are real life stories of people, ordinary people, going through the challenges of life. And everybody talks about, you got to do this. Well, who are the people who have actually walked it, and you walked it?
Yeah, well, and it's been a challenge.
Yeah.
It's definitely been a challenge, but it's been one that's been worth it because if God can transform my life from the inside out, then I know He can transform my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm watching Him do that through me, and I'm watching Him do that through my family. Mm-hmm.
Well, tell us, Stephanie, just a little bit about your background, and where you come from, and what inspired you to write this book. The book is, we can pick it up and post it. It's Broken but Restored, Living a Life of Trials to Triumph. Broken but Restored, look at that. I mean, it is your autobiography.
Right? Autobiography,
yeah.
Ah,
wow.
That's so exciting.
That's so amazing. Look, it's incredible.
To have somebody else my book, I'm flabbergasted. Like, I'm speechless. I've imagined this for so long, and I prayed about it for so long, and now it's here. It's like, So thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my story. Because I've just been waiting to share it.
Oh, great. Well, share it, please. Share us the story. You heard in my opening monologue a little bit about forgiveness and atonement and all that stuff. Do you think it's important to forgive yourself and those acts of atonement?
Most definitely. Just to kind of share a little bit of what happened with me. I've been abused physically, sexually, emotionally, psychologically, all of the above. It shaped me in a place where I literally broke down. I dealt with suicide, I dealt with depression, hitting rock bottom completely. And so I had to learn to forgive me and my choice. I had to face some of the consequences of my actions and realize I hurt a lot of people. And that's a place that a lot of people get uncomfortable dealing with because it deals with your heart. It deals with, okay, yes, I kind of forgiven you, but I'm still going to kind of make you pay for what you did to hurt me back. So when you're going through a process of atonement, you realize who is also the one who you hurt. And you have to take it to this place of, okay, God, I don't want to be this way. I don't want to be an angry person. I was extremely angry. I was angry at myself. I was angry at the world. I was angry at God. And I wanted my life to change. But I wasn't really doing the work myself. I'm helping everybody else. But I couldn't focus on Stephanie. And now that I focus on Stephanie, I'm able to actually help somebody else. Even more because now I've helped myself. Now that I've helped myself, I can help people. Yeah. You can't really help nobody and you haven't really gone through the fire. You haven't really said, okay, I've gone and I've dealt with depression, but what are you doing to still deal with it? A lot of people in church will not acknowledge the fact that they're depressed because they believe if you basically speak it, that's what it is, right? And I get that. I understand that wholeheartedly. I thought the same way. But I also had to realize I have to own it in order for me to confront it and move forward from it. And it's the same thing with forgiveness. I have to look at all the people that have done me wrong and be like, yes, you've done me wrong, but God helped me. I didn't know how. I thought I was doing it. I thought I was healed from a lot of the stuff on my past. And then something would happen, I would get triggered, and then I'm going left. And everyone's looking at me like, well, what is wrong with you? You're a woman of God. You shouldn't be acting like that. You shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do that. But I'm a person. I have feelings. Like, I have emotions. Just because I go to church and I really love God does not mean that I'm not going to hurt or feel the stuff that comes at me. So it takes a lot. It
does take a lot. And, it's so many times when we're going through our life challenges and meeting them, we forget that, we're not perfect. We're not, and trying to acknowledge the things that we've done wrong and what we've done wrong to others is part of the healing process. You can't skip that process. You can't go past that process. You can't avoid it. You can't get to the higher altitudes without having worked through the things that you need to clear up. And you'll keep repeating over and over again these patterns of behavior if you're not getting to the truth about things. You've got to get to the truth. Now, your book is described on your website as transparent, honest, revealing, intriguing, and suspenseful. So if you could, that sounds great. It's like what I want to hear, it looks fantastic. So what is it? Just tell us what it's about.
It's really a journey through my life. Mm-hmm. I go back to my earliest childhood memory and take you all the way through up until 2015. And I share about all of my struggles, all the things that I did from a young child to my adolescent years, to my teenage years, to coming into adulthood. And all of the things in between. I don't try to just put it from my perspective. I try to tell from others' perspective, things that's gone on. I know I'm not a perfect person, and I never wanted to portray that in my book. I portray yes, everybody's just so wrong and Stephanie didn't do anything. That definitely was the case. Wasn't the case. I did a lot of wrong. I didn't realize how much it was until I really started seeking God a little bit more. I wanted to know who he was, how he loved, why he loved me the way he did. I didn't believe I was lovable. It was hard for me to accept the love even from my husband, because I was like, ain't nobody love me. I've been told all my life I've been hard to deal with. Mm-hmm. I talk too much. I play too much. I do this. I'm overreacting. I'm overthinking, all these things. And I'm like, I began to think I was crazy, literally thinking I'm crazy. I'm like, everybody's making it seem like Stephanie is just all over the place. And there was times I really was, but I'm like, God, why is everybody coming at me like I'm just the one that's doing wrong? I did it, but why isn't anybody else acknowledging this stuff? Mm-hmm. And I really just started asking him all these questions. Even when it came to church, I just began asking questions. And because of those questions, growing up has been the main reason why I wanted to write this book. Mm-hmm. You hear about all these big name preachers. Yes, I've gone through this, and yes, I've done this, but you don't really see how they've done it. You don't really know how they got from that point to now you're on this platform. I really wanted to be that person. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be that person that I wish I had. Mm-hmm. And so it took some time. Mm-hmm. I'm still a work in progress, and we will be until the day that we die. I'm a forever life student. I don't want to never not be taught anything. I always want to know something. And I always want to be filled with some type of knowledge just because, God says in his word, and all I get and get an understanding. I want to understand why we operate the way we operate. Mm-hmm. Why do you feel that way? Why are we making some of the choices that we make, and how can we really stop these? I read tons of self-help books, tons of spiritual books. I was hungry, and I'm like, okay, I'm hearing certain things from people, and I'm just like, some stuff, this doesn't make any sense.
And I think it is. It's not, but I think what people are really wanting is to have a personal experience with the Lord. Yeah. I think they want to have a personal experience with God, the Creator, Source, Allah, but they want to have a personal experience that heaven knows me. Right. That heaven knows my name. That it knows I'm here. We want to feel the holy in us, the sacred in us. And very often, a lot of times, the religious institutions have failed us in those ways because of how they've exploited that need, that core need that people have. And so people like you and I, we go on our journeys to find that experience in ourselves and yet all those broken parts that we have to go through in order to go through it and then reassemble it back together again is part of that
That's
coming home.
one of the main reasons why my book is called Broken Cousins. You know, it was, I'm not all the way there. Like, I'm still broken in many areas. But it's by God's grace that and His love that I'm still here. Like, I don't look like what I've been through. I spend a lot of time just talking it out in my head. You know, people made it seem like you have to do this and do that and have to be so ritualistic and so legalistic. Like, no, it's none of that. Just like you and I talk, that's how you talk to God. And people are like, it's that simple. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
It's that simple.
It really is.
You know,
It really
and
is,
it's
yeah.
like when you realize that, it's like you want everybody to share in that feeling. You want everybody to understand. You know what? God is not worried about that. You're struggling with homosexuality, lesbianism, whatever it is, alcoholism, drugs. I don't care what it is. God is like, I'm here. I love you. No matter what. I couldn't wrap my mind around that because everybody told me you're just difficult. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? Why am I so difficult? I don't want to be like that. I would see some of the grumpy elderly people, and I'm just like, why did you live that hard of a life? You know, like, I'm like, okay, God, like, bless them, but help me not to be that grumpy person. You know, I watched my parents just be grumpy. And my dad, he's been in church for forever. But there was stuff within him that he wasn't acknowledging. And it was like, Lord, you know, growing up in church and you're hearing all these things and you're like, okay, you've been beat over the head so much with this stuff, and then you're not really wholeheartedly living it the way that you say you are. And I'm like, I began questioning everything. Like, I literally wanted to walk away from God. Like, I just stopped. I kept going to my church, but I stopped following a lot of people I used to be around and used to associate with in church because I was like, I want to get away from everything. I want to get to a place where I'm hearing from God and I know it's God and there's nobody else because I've had so much confusion with things that's gone on that I'm like, I need clear direction. I don't want to just be stuck in these patterns. Like, I want my life, my family's life, and those that are connected to me to elevate to the best life possible. Why not? There's so many other people that are doing it. The only thing is we can't let the money and the materials have it.
Yes. And it's so easy to get caught up into materialism and consumerism of our culture because it's identified. It's put right out in front of us.
All the time.
Just a quick station announcement. We are broadcasting live here at in Bloomfield, Colorado, Denver, Colorado, here at KUHSdenver.com. That's KUHSdenver.com. Broadcasting here all over Colorado, the United States, and all around the world. Thank you, folks, for tuning in to this amazing show today with Stephanie Meadows here on the council. Stephanie, I want to get into a little bit about your life story, your life history. What was it like growing up as a child?
It was a typical childhood, but where I grew up in Colorado, I grew up in Wheaton.
Yeah.
So when I grew up out there, I was one of 3 kids that was of African American descent. So I experienced a lot of racism. That was one thing that shaped me as well. There was a time where I was playing in the park, and I speak with this in my book, and there was a Hispanic guy that exposed his genitals to me. And I ran. I didn't say anything to my mom because, like, even then, my mom always freaked out about everything. And I was really trying to process what happened in my mind. As I grew up, as I came to womanhood, I would see these Hispanic guys and they would try to talk to me or whatever, and I was just like so angry and hateful towards them. Well, I'm half Hispanic too. So it was like I was kind of hating part of me, and I'm like, oh my God, why? When I went through a process of going from being this little girl into being a teenager, into being a woman, but yet the little girl was still there. She never really grew up. because she was always hurt. She always got shut up. She always got told to be quiet. She was never able to voice her voice and say what was wrong. And so this book was my voice. It's my voice for a lot of other women that are dealing with sexual abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse, mental abuse. You know, all of the above. Men, I've talked to a couple of guys, they're like, I can relate to your story. You know, I've been abused in some type of way. It's not just for me to reach out to women. This can reach out to the multitude, men and women. You know, because we've all been broken in some type of way. You know, whether it's been by our parents, whether it's been by a girlfriend, a job, you know, it could be whatever. And we can hold all that stuff in. We can hold all it in, and it almost consumes us and eats us alive. You know, and so I wanted to share my story, not only to just get my voice heard, but to help somebody who doesn't have any hope or maybe struggling. They can say, you know what, if she saw that, if she lived through that, guess what, I can.
Well, what are some of the trials you experienced? I mean, that you've been talking about? Because, you know, we have people who've been abused, you know, and people who've experienced emotional abuse, psychological abuse, sexual abuse. We've had you know, people who are struggling with those things, you know, and it's not so much. All of us, like you said, have been broken in some way, or most of us. It's what we do with it, and how do we overcome that? How do we take those steps? But like you know, I had you know, I was an addict for many years. You know, I had become. I was in the military. I had lost my way. I had been working on a project that was violated my whole moral code. I got what's called moral injury. I'd never used drugs before in my life. I was the clean-cut American boy, all this, and I didn't even want to. I used to tease my friends. I was like, they would be smoking a little bit of marijuana when I was a teenager. I was like, what are you guys doing? You know, I came to, and something, I was waking up with these terrible apocalyptic nightmares because I was working on the nuclear warfare program and frozen in my bed, breaking out into sweats and all these things. And so it was extraordinarily traumatic, and I lost all hope. I lost all faith in humanity. I thought we're just going to blow each other up anyway. So why live a good life? Why live a moral life? You know, that was my whole thinking at the time. And I turned away. I remember, I turned away from God. And I was on a porch, and he said, I don't know why you created this world the way you did. And I'm not going to participate in this anymore. I can't be a part of this kind of suffering and this kind of death. And so I turned away and lived a very wild lifestyle, and was a libertine and a derelict in a debaucherous lifestyle. And I became an addict. You know? And so you fought those things too. You mentioned that you've been doing ecstasy for some time.
In the summer of 2002, I was taking up
8 pills of ecstasy a day.
I literally would wake up, we, smoke, eat, as soon as I put my head coming down, all day. I had no job. The boyfriend I had at the time was a drug dealer, which the reason why we got the ecstasy pills is because we robbed somebody. So they ended up splitting them to sell some and some of them for us to take. So that's how I got onto ecstasy. And I can't lie, I loved it.
Yeah, it feels good.
I loved it, everything about it was letting go, feeling free. You know what I'm saying? It was that moment of, I don't have to work. I don't have to stress. I don't have to care. I don't have to feel. I just want to be happy. And that's what the joy of the Lord is. And that's what He wants us to understand and wants us to know. Like, we don't have to use these things in order to endure life, right? But even if you are, God still doesn't hold that against you. He's still right there loving you. Like, when I rededicated my life back to God, I was at a place of walking away from my family. And this was before my husband and I got married. And I was going to leave my family for my weed man and his girlfriend. And I wasn't worried about the chickens too much, but me and the guy, we vibed and we talked. And it was like, and then his birthday was the day after mine. And it was like, oh, so we have a lot in common, and then we're smoking. So it was like, you just really connect like that. And so my husband at the time, he ended up having to go through 30 days in jail. And God used him while he was in there to minister to me. And I was like, man. So a lot of people was like, I would tell people, I would be at home, go out to church, whatever, and I would light up and read my Bible. And then everything was like, ooh, man, this is so good. This is clear. Like, I'm getting it. Wow. But it just dwindled because I had to leave my weed man alone. Now I do become a business. And a lot of religious people will look at me like, well, you know, God, yes, I believe God is going to heal my body and heal my life. But I'm not going to put the chemicals, and you're not going to make me feel any type of way. I prayed and fasted and did all the religious things that people should tell you to do in order for you to hear God. Just because you're not sure that I'm hearing from God doesn't mean that I'm not. And that's one thing that a lot of religious people will do too, is make you feel like you're not listening or you're not hearing or you're rebellious. And it's like, do you really understand what you're doing? Like, or do you understand what you're teaching? You know, if you're telling us to study, to show thyself approved unto God, not unto man, right? This is what his word says. So if I'm doing all this, as I'm starting to seek him, guess what? Drawing to me, he draws near, right? So as we draw unto him, he's coming closer. So the more we're coming closer, guess what? The more we gain his clarity, the more we gain his understanding, the more he opens our eyes, our spirit. We become more like him.
Well, one of my favorite things is judge not, lest you be judged.
You know, and that was the thing. So even in then, like last year, I had a big thing when I quit smoking cigarettes. And I had to literally go to everybody and say, I'm sorry for judging you. Like my brother-in-law, I would go left on him because he would have my house smelling like weed and some other things. And I'm like, oh my God, my kids, this, that, and the third, because in my mind, that's what we've been taught in school, that weed is a gateway drug. I asked so many people, I said, let me ask you this question. I said, what did you start first? Did you start smoking first? Or did you start drinking first? And most people have started out with alcohol. So how is marijuana the gateway drug?
It's a fabrication. It's a total fabrication used as propaganda to let people know it's a plant. Okay? It's a plant that people grows and it helps people. It only affects the pharmaceuticals pocketbooks. And they've got a huge crisis as it is with the opioid crisis. And you know what? They got what's coming to them. And they're going to pay back because they killed a lot of people with this opioid crisis. And it's on them. And so they knew about it. They knew what they were doing. And so
all they did was take stuff out of the plant and recreate it in order to synthesize it. They don't do it to cure. They don't do anything to cure.
No, it doesn't cure. It doesn't cure. There's no cure. There's no healing in that. None. Zero.
None. So it's like, okay, you want us to believe God is healing us. You want us to go see these doctors and listen to the doctor. Okay. But if I'm doing my research, if I'm doing my studying, if I'm talking to God about something he created, then how are you going to make me feel a type of way? And that's the type of mentality that religion has on people. And I had it on me. So I had to come out of it. But I wanted to. I didn't want to live my life being the way that I was. Like, I was judgmental towards certain people. But then I had to realize, oh, I'm struggling with bisexuality and I've been married. 10 years tomorrow, my husband and I will be married. And you can't come out like that to people in the church. Oh, let's hurry up and take you to the altar. Okay, I just told you I'm struggling with it. It doesn't mean that I'm Jewish. But you can't do that. Okay, it says in the Bible, confession calls one to another. Okay. You don't know who to talk to because people are so busy either judging you, even though they say they're not, they actually do. Or you got people that talk to you. Like, I was always worried about other people and their opinions. So I had to talk to my husband. Like, I prayed everything concerning my book. Any intentions, heart motive, anybody in my life that's connected to me that doesn't mean me no good. Like, God, reveal the hidden things. And he began doing that. Little did I know, he was going to start it with me. I had to reveal all my hidden stuff. You know what I'm saying? I had to be open, transparent, and vulnerable for my family to say, you know what? Okay, if she can kind of, loosen up and change. They watched me. They watched me go from being this working person to being depressed. I was overweight. I was at one point 230 pounds.
Wow.
I'm at 180 right now.
Yeah.
Working on it.
Working on it. Just keep working on it, man.
You know what I'm saying? So, and in all this time, I was going to church. I'm doing everything that everybody's saying I should do. But yet I had absolutely no peace. Why do I have peace, God? What is going on? I yelled at my dad because I was frustrated. I'm like, I can't pay my bills. I can't do this. Like, this makes no sense. God, how do you have? I told God, I said, God, I feel like you have us like little pups. You know, like, he understands that we're feeling this way. You know, don't feel bad for asking questions. Don't feel bad for talking to God. He knows that you're going to go left and cuss him out.
Well, you know, and it's, I want to make sure that, you know, I have a lot of people from all walks of life watch the show. And I think it's important that we recognize and understand that God loves everybody. Gay people, homosexual people, lesbians, drug addicts, opioid addicted people, rapists, murderers. There is no judgment on this show. We embrace everybody. We understand that the soul has no religion. Religion is part of the process and how we find God. I think the soul came before that. And that's just really clear. I want to make sure that the people who are watching the show, who've been watching it, understand that we embrace all faiths on this program and all people.
We're all looking for the same thing. Yeah. We're all looking for that relationship with God.
Yes,
and I had to learn because even with some of the people, like, they won't go into certain restaurants because food is there, this, that, and third is there. And I'm like, I got my nails done by a lady, and, you know, they're in the center or whatever. And literally, God used her to minister to me about resting. And if I was still in my religious mind, I wouldn't have received her being used by God. You know what I'm saying? Just because she may not operate in the same faith that I do, her faith and who she believes in is still the same. You know, everybody had a big thing about coexistence, all the different religions. Guess what? This is the world that God created. We're supposed to coexist regardless.
We want to coexist with everybody.
You know what I'm saying? So, and on top of that, you're talking about how much God is love. Love. But you got to show it.
You got to demonstrate it.
Love
you got to totally demonstrate. It's action. It's not just words. It's totally not words. If you're just talking about it and not doing it, you're not living it.
Right. And that's not. And I wasn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't walking in love.
Now, how were you overcoming? You had, you said, how did you overcome reaching about God? What was it that you did? You experienced addiction. You experienced rejection. What was it that helped you to? Besides that, was there some moment in your life that because I can remember my rock moment in my life. All right, I was when I was an addict. I had this moment where I was so high. It was a terrible time in my life, and I was high on drugs. And my mom was trying to call me for my birthday, and I couldn't pick up the phone because I was so high, and I didn't want to embarrass her. It was one of the lowest points of my life. Just like, what has become of me? And it was at that moment where I was like, that was my rock bottom. And I started to decide, you know what, I've got to get out of it. And so, was there something like that that happened for you?
To be honest, I'm still going through those moments.
Hmm.
But the main one I can say probably came in 2016. And I ended up having to kind of go to Florida because I literally felt like I was losing my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking thoughts of, I'm just about to, I'll be driving. And I'm like, I should probably do this.
Mm-hmm.
Not realizing they're not my thoughts. I don't have to accept every thought that comes into my thoughts. Every thought is not my thought. I had to learn that. I didn't really grasp that concept. And so I allowed the enemy to just constantly play with my mind and not realize like I was still surrounded by love. I was still surrounded by people that loved and cared about me, but I could not see it. I could not get past what I was feeling. And I never was alone. I've had my daughter with me since the age of, since 2000, she's 18 years old, I'm 19 years. Never been without my kids. Never spent any time away. And so I asked God, a friend of mine ended up moving out to Florida. And the way we was just, operating and moving, I really believed that I was going to be working with her in ministry. And so I flew out to Florida, trusting God to do so much. And in that process of being out there and being away from my family, I found destiny. And it took a lot of praying, a lot of running to the altar, a lot of times of me breaking down at home, just crying and screaming and saying, God, I'm tired of this. Like, how can I get past it? I still pray some of that. I would write stuff down. I got notebooks on my notebook. My husband gets so irritated with me sometimes because it's just papers everywhere, but it just comes with the territory of being a writer. Like, you got to get it out. That story, everybody has a story that needs to be shared. Yes. Even if it's not put in a book, I've been through something, and you know what? Here's some hope. Here's some hope.
Is that what you're hoping that the book is going to accomplish? Is to give people hope, to give them the sense that they can move through their challenges?
That's what I'm hoping. Yeah. Definitely.
What was the most difficult part for you in your healing process?
Oh, coming to the realization that I wasn't hurt. Like, I knew some of the stuff that I did, but I didn't realize I was also being abused. I turned around and everything that was being done to me, I was being at. The saying goes, hurt people hurt people. That's true. So, in that sense, it's like, oh, damn. I really did this shit. Like,
oh my gosh.
Was I really this bad? Yeah. And, like, my kids was walking around on eggshells. Like, I would go left at the drop of a dime, and they're like, oh, you did. They would call my husband, Mom, you know what I'm saying? So, as I started coming out of this and hearing some of the stories, they're like, we was trying to do this. And I'm like, oh my God. My biggest fear was being depressed, going through some of the stuff that my mom was going through. And I found myself doing the same exact thing. And I'm like, okay, well, this is not what I wanted, but obviously there's something. My mom is not a bad person at all. I learned more love through my mom, who doesn't really go to church, than my dad who did. You know what I'm saying? But I learned faith and learned God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit because of him. So there's two things that they definitely taught, you know what I'm saying? And even though I'm their child, they're still looking to me for certain things. You know what I'm saying? Like, I look to my kids. I'm learning from my kids. There are certain things they can come to me and be like, you know what, Mom? That was wrong. Don't do it disrespectfully. But if I'm being wrong, please come tell me so I can fix it, because I don't want to be like that. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to be like, oh, if I lied about something, they're like, Mom, you lied. And I'm like, don't tell me you. No. I should be able to be like, okay. And then explain to them, like, if it was a lie, I wasn't trying to, or at least explain to them, this is why I said what I said. So it wasn't a lie, but, some things come up. And that's all we need as kids. Is somebody to be genuine, somebody to open up and just talk to you.
I think so. And sometimes you can learn from just the habits of the heart, but you learn that not necessarily. You don't learn that at church. You don't learn that in synagogue. You don't learn that in the mosque. It's what happens within those family structures. And sometimes people can use God or religion as a shield to hide that stuff that they have to look at. They mask it over ourselves. And so instead of being, wow, we got to be vulnerable. We got to be open-hearted here. We got to be truthful. We got to pull back those layers, and we can't hide behind our religion. And that's such a big thing. And so that's why, sometimes some of the most, I was in when I was in my healing part and trying to reform my character, and I had an opportunity to go to Thailand to work for a human rights agency, and I was working to help bring attention to the child sex slave trade that was going on in Southeast Asia, and we were helping to build these orphanages in Chiang Mai for the Hmong children there in the northern part of Thailand. And so I went up into the hill country there in Thailand to meet these children. And I met some of the most incredible kids, and they had such innate goodness in them. They were in this very, they believed in animism, but there was just this innate love of goodness. I went to take a picture with this little boy who was malnourished, who was really small for his age, and who had nothing. These people slept on a platform, the whole family, like all five of them, with the grandma, grandpa, and the kids, and the mom, and they all lived in one room, and they had one little bowl to eat their food from. And I bend down and take a picture with this little boy, and this little boy picks up a scoop of his rice and feeds it to me. And here's this little boy who had nothing, and I had everything. And so, to me, that was an example of love, genuine love, action, giving, that it is innate for us to do that. And it has nothing to do with religion. And so we can hide behind those things. So, but that action of love, that is God in motion. That is that movement forward, and that's where we have to get to. And I think that's exactly where you've gotten to in this book here that which is amazing. Ready to celebrate with the rest of the world. Is there, in your opinion, what was your experience of making amends with the people in your life?
Some was good.
Yeah.
Some not so good.
Yeah.
Even now, like before we came in here, I have problems with my family, and it's like I'm trying to be the best person I can. And sometimes because of people being so familiar with you and knowing your past, they're like, you don't need really good. Okay. I'll let you believe that because God does what He needs to do. And because I'm working my ass off, guess what? I'm still going to be blessed. There's absolutely nothing we can do that's going to separate us from God. Yes, my actions have consequences. Good or bad. That's just life, period, right? So at the end of the day, all right, I'm working myself off to go and accomplish the life that God has. We always expect God to do everything.
No.
We've
got to do our part.
Please,
We've got to do our part. And I think that's one of the important things. I was talking earlier about those steps that Azim was talking about, how to be able to forgive and move yourself through and achieving that redemption. We've got to do deeds. We've got to be sincere, and we've got to be genuine, and they've got to come from the heart. You've got to come from the heart. You cannot change. You cannot fake a change, an authentic, genuine change. You cannot. In your opinion, what is the secret? What do you think is the secret to turning our challenges, our trials into triumphs?
Just really wanting more out of life. You really want to have a determination to say, I don't want to live like this anymore. and really be doing and willing to do whatever it is to accomplish that legally.
Yes, legally.
You know, because
Right.
there in my story,
You're so right on that. Yes.
I've shared stuff that I've done illegally. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, now that I know I can use all of my energy to actually form businesses. Why not? There's nothing wrong. The stuff that I want to accomplish, guess what? It takes money. I can't make no money if I don't work. Even writing this book, just because I'm sitting down doesn't mean that it's not work. Everything about it is work. I had to do marketing research. I had to figure out editors, figure out how to do everything, formatting. Oh my gosh, like everything about it. So now it's like,
But, I think you're so right with that. You got to make that decision and that you want to have a better life. You period. It's it. There's something that's like, you know what? I've got to have a better life than what I have. It's either this or I'm dying. That's
life or death.
Right.
Life or death.
And you come to that moment, and I think that is that epiphany. And you just say, whatever it takes to get me to climb this mountain, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to climb that mountain. And you have, and I'm so happy and grateful to know that you've done this. To write a book and celebrate your life, and to bring this out to so many people who are going to be blessed by your words and by your conviction and by your sincerity and genuineness of life. You're going to touch many, many lives. And so, if you're so welcome. We have just a couple seconds or a couple minutes here before we close out the show for today. Stephanie, if you could give one piece of advice, one bit of wisdom from your life experience, I ask this of all my guests, what would it be?
One piece of advice. Keep God first. Because apart from Him, you can do nothing. I could not have finished this book if He was not there with me. My husband, when he finished the book, my kids, when they didn't know what to do. Mom and my dad, my friends, and they didn't know what to do with it. I was scared. Just keep them first. And guarantee you, He will always watch us.
That's right. When you have God in your heart, you can be your fortress, you can be your shield, you can be your rock. He is the Holy One, one and holy. Thank you, Stephanie, for being here and joining us here on the council so much. God bless. And with best of luck on your new book, and on I think it's April 13th, right? That you have the
April 13th, I'll be
releasing the book, and it's going to be at the Marriott. Is it for people who might be interested? Courtyard at Marriott. At what time?
At 6 p.m.
At 6 p.m. So the Courtyard
at Marriott Gateway.
At Marriott Gateway at 6 p.m.
Yep.
All right, and that's going to be April 13th. All right, fantastic. Thank you, Stephanie, so much. Folks, thank you for tuning in to the council today. We will be back in a couple of weeks. We've got a number of shows that are going to be coming up that you're going to be excited about. We're going to be going out to Vegas here in a few weeks and going to meet with some fantastic people out there. You don't want to miss it as we're moving into higher consciousness and spirituality and some of the leaders of the field that we'll be talking to out there. Also going to be having some, Gina Caputo is going to be on. We're going to talk about yoga, and it's one of my favorite things to do. And all kinds of great things that we've got lined up for you on the council. I just want to thank KUHSdenver.com for allowing us to be our platform for the council. We're touching lives all over the world. This show exists because of you. And I just want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in. It's an honor and a privilege. The council is adjourned. May you all be well. May you all be free of pain and suffering. May you all be whole. We will see you in a couple of weeks. Thank you, folks. God bless. Thank you, folks, on the International Camera. We will be back in 2 weeks here on the Council with another great show for you. Please tune in. Thank you for tuning in from wherever you are around the world. It really is an honor and privilege. And we will see you soon. Thank you. God bless.